Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are working on this. This is my Yamaha YZ125 motocross bike. This is a 2006 model. As you'll notice there, it has been stripped, so I'll give you a little bit of the backstory on this. I thought I'd do a bit of a video on this, show you what I'm up to. A bit more of a daily vlog rather than a restoration video, but I thought I'm doing it, why not film it, give you guys something to watch. So the story on this is, basically I bought this bike a few weeks ago. A couple of my friends decided they was getting motocross bikes to do a bit of green laning and stuff. Obviously these are road registered bikes as well. So I took this out for a quick run last week. It was the first run I'd had out on this bike since I'd bought it. About 15 minutes into that first run, it decided to cut out on me. So I managed to get someone to pick me up in a van. We brought it back here, we did some tests, and we actually found it had lost its spark. Narrowed it down basically to the stator plate. I'll show you where that is in a moment. So as we was looking at it, we did notice a few other bits and bobs that we just weren't happy with on this bike. There's a little bit of play in this rear wheel bearing, so we're going to be addressing that. Also, I started to notice little bits of wiring like this that just weren't great, and there's a few other little bits and bobs of wiring as well that I weren't entirely happy with. The front brake pads are pretty much on the metal, and just a couple of other little bits and bobs. So I thought, right, well, we're at this stage, may as well take the engine out. It's not a big job to do on these. Let's get all the plastics off it and let's go through this thing and make sure everything is right so that I don't come into any issues next time I go out on it. So this is why it is now in stripped down state you see there. So I'll show you what I mean by the stator plate and where that sits. I've got the engine on the bench over here. So the stator plate sits in there. It basically consists of a few windings of copper wire, and it runs on a magneto wheel. So you have the magneto wheel, which I'll just grab, show you that. So this is what we call the magneto wheel. This sits on the crank. Obviously as the engine's turning, this is spinning with the engine. You've got a little lump there on the top. So as this is turning, that little notch there passes by a little pickup on the stator plate and generates basically a current. That current is then passed through into the CDI unit, the coil, so on and so forth, which is basically what generates the spark for the bike. So we found that this had failed in here. I've now removed this and I've sent this away to be rewound, repaired, and we should be getting that back this week. So while I had the engine out, so just give it a bit of a clean up really. There was quite a bit of a build up of mud and stuff on this, obviously from doing a bit of off-roading. So it has now come up pretty clean. I've had a look up inside the exhaust port. Piston and rings and everything look good. This bike has recently had a top end rebuild. I think it's done about 10 hours on this motor since it had its rebuild. It also had a new crank and some other bits and bobs recently as well. So let's go back over to the bike. So you'll notice there a couple of old radiators on the floor. As I stripped this bike down, I actually noticed that this radiator had a repair on the top there. Not a very good repair, as you can see, which has already started to crack. So I seen that and I thought that is definitely going to cause me an issue in the very near future, if not on my next ride. So I went ahead and ordered some uprated aluminium radiators, which you'll see there, which I've now got fitted. They're far superior to the originals. These will give the bike better cooling and they just look cool as well. And obviously the fins are a lot better on these. There's quite a lot of damage to the fins on those ones, so these will hold more coolant. So them are now installed. We've got a couple of the pipes on down here. I do need to make a new leak-off pipe or overflow pipe or whatever you want to call it from the top of this radiator, because that is actually a thicker pipe than what is on the original, so the original pipe doesn't fit that. So we're going to be putting a new pipe on there, and again we're going to be sorting through all this wiring and stuff. So my next mission on this is to get the engine back in, because I can fit that stator plate with the engine in situ. So we're going to drop the engine in, we're going to start putting this thing back together. There's a few bits and bobs that are loose, like this brake pedal, that need to go back on. Obviously the chain, we're going to be doing the front pads, just having a look at this wheel bearing. I don't think it's going to be a case of just tightening it up, or there's no adjustment on these basically, so I think I will end up having to order a new wheel bearing kit for that, but that is something we can deal with at a later date. So again, we're going to be going through this. I've also cleaned out inside this airbox because it was packed with mud and all sorts of crud. So I'll give this a right good clean up, and we've also got a new air filter to go in there as well. I'm going to be ordering some new grips in a different colour. Obviously green doesn't suit this bike, and they are all torn on the ends. And I'm probably going to order some new fist guards, probably the same again. I do quite like the look of these, but these have served the purpose now, and they're looking a little bit worse for wear. So this has got lots of extras on this bike, including Talon hubs, XL rims. We've got the ASV brake levers, which are the snapback levers. So if you do drop this bike on the floor, these levers will fold that way and prevent these from snapping. Same again on the clutch as well, that's also a snapback lever. We've got the blue silicone hoses, we've got uprated brake pedal. Again, this is a snapback pedal, should prevent it from snapping. It's got upgraded brake lines. We've got all the protectors on the swing arm. It's got a full FMF exhaust system, Gold Series exhaust system with the little shorty pipe on the back as well. Quite a few other bits and bobs. The engine is also race tuned. We've got the Renfrew bars, which are an uprated bar as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot of extras on this bike. So let's crack on, guys. Let's get, hopefully, this engine in, and let's get the majority of this built back up. So then, in the next couple of days, hopefully when my stator plate comes back, we can lob that on the engine, and then hopefully this thing will start and run. So let's do it. Okay, so with that engine now bolted back in, that's now in situ and the bolts are tight. One of the other issues I was experiencing with this bike is it was leaking fuel out of the overflow on the carb with the fuel turned on. I think we might have an issue with the float height. It was also putting in a little bit too much fuel, I think, as well, because there was quite a lot of content of fuel in the airbox, which I think was being blown back through. So I think we might have some issues on this with the jetting. Could be clogged. Not entirely sure the last time this carb was cleaned out. I don't know the history of this bike other than the engine work it's had. So we're going to get the carb on the bench, we're going to take it apart, we're going to check the float height, make sure the fuel is shutting off as it's supposed to do, and we'll take the jets out, give them a clean, blow them out of an airline, and see if we can spot any issues inside that carburetor. Right guys, so that is the bolts out of the float bowl. Let's pop this off now. Let's have a look what this looks like inside. To be fair, that does look pretty clean. I'll see if I can just show you this, guys, see if I can get it to focus. Right, so basically the way these work is, this is the float chamber, and in there, let's try and zoom out a little bit so it will focus a little bit better. So in there, that little pin, that's like a little shut off valve. So basically when the carb is filled with fuel, obviously the floats are dangling down, the float ball fills with fuel, it lifts the floats up and it shuts the fuel off. As the fuel gets used, the floats will start to sink, and then more fuel will come back through the carb and fill that float ball back up with fuel. Now what's happening with mine is, it is constantly filling with fuel. So we have got some sort of an issue here. Either the floats are full of fuel and they're too heavy. I have had these in the past go porous, where fuel actually gets inside the floats and the floats can no longer float and they just sink down and they stick like that all the time. Or we have an issue with the height that this pin is set at. So when these floats are up, fuel is still passing through and getting into the float bowl. So that's what we're going to investigate next, and then we'll start to pull these jets out. Let's have a look inside here and see if any of these are blocked to make sure everything's clear there. So what I've just done there, guys, is I've filled up the fuel intake pipe with some brake cleaner. And there is a little bit weeping past these floats. There's a little bit weeping past these floats, but you'll notice now when I let these floats go, fluid will come out at the bottom. So we know that them floats are working to a certain degree, but I do think there was a little bit just getting past there. So we will investigate that. I think we might just have to alter the height of that pin just on the inside there. So let's knock these floats out and let's have a look what's going on. Just noticed down there, guys, it looks like there is some junk or something in there. So I'm just going to try and pop this out and have a look what's going on inside there. I don't know if you can see that, guys, but there is quite a large chunk of garbage in there. So let's get that cleaned out for a start. Right, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to crack these jets out and let's have a look, see if them are clear. Now let's have a look down there. Looks pretty clean, we'll give it a little blast. Let's get some compressed air. It does look like there's something in that. Well, that looks better now because I can actually see right through that and I couldn't a minute ago. Right, let's try that again. Got a very tiny little smear of rubber grease on there just to help guide this sealing. That's better. That's far better. So I think that little chunk of garbage that was just down there, just preventing this from sitting flush, so that actually could have been the cause of our issue, because that being stuck out very slightly is going to alter the height of those floats. Right, so that is all that back together. Let's just check the operation of this again. Now looking at this, a closer look at this, I would say that this has had this issue of it leaking fuel for some time, because when you look at that, someone's been beating this with an hammer. Obviously thinking the floats were stuck, they've been tapping it and knocking it. So that has probably been an issue with this bike for a while. So hopefully we've cured that now. So I'm just going to put the gasket back in here. Let's put this float chamber back on. Float bowl, whatever you want to call it. Let's get this on the bike. Right, let's see if we can get this carb back in. As I was saying earlier, it is a little bit fidgety this, so it might be a little bit of a faff, but we will get it in one way or another. Right. Well, that actually went in easier than I was expecting it to. Okay, so that's that bit in. We can now get this rear frame fastened up, and that's that bit done. Right, so next up we're going to be getting these top mounts on from the cylinder head to the frame. I'm just going to put some new bolts in there as well, because the old bolts was quite mashed up and the threads weren't the best on those, so got some new bolts here. Hopefully these will fit. And I've actually just realised as well that I forgot to put the frame protectors on before I put this rear brake lever on, so I'm going to have to pop that back off and also pop that bolt out of the rear frame, and this is the fixing points for the frame protector, so a couple of bolts to take back out there, but it is what it is, it's got to be done. Right, so with those in, let's get this throttle cable mounted back into position. This just slides in like so. We've got our frame protectors back on there now, as you'll see here. Now we are going to start putting these coolant pipes back on. I'm just going to put some new Jubilee clips on there while I'm at this point. I don't particularly like to reuse Jubilee clips, so I've got a box of assorted Jubilee clips there. Let's get these engine coolant pipes back on, pop some new Jubilee clips on it while we're at this point. So next on the list, we're going to be putting this chain guard back on, which just sits over here. Right, 10mm spanner somewhere. So what we need to do here, guys, is some little pegs just on this back wheel. So we're going to count these pegs and line them up with this notch there, and we'll just make sure that that's even on the other side, so then we know the back wheel is running straight and true and it's not sort of kicked over to one side. So counting this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notches. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notches on this side, so that needs to go forward a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So that needs to go about there. One, two, three, four, five. A little bit. Okay. Let's go on that side up. Right, that's that done. So next on the list is this bit of dodgy wiring here. There's not an awful lot I can do with this, to be fair, guys. I'm going to rejoin these here. As you can see, that's just fell apart in my hand. This is actually for the stop switch. It's just been twisted together basically, and I'm not entirely happy about that. If this was to come undone while I was riding and these wires was to earth out against the frame, that will cut the bike out. So I'm just going to get some crimp connectors, pop them on here, join these together with some crimps, and then all I can do is tape these back up. I would love to put some heat shrink on this, but unfortunately I don't have any here, so insulation tape will have to do. So the connectors I'm using for this are crimp on. They are actually heat shrink crimp on. So we fasten these with a set of crimp pliers. Once we've got them on, we'll heat that up. These will shrink and make the wire and the connector watertight. I would love to sleeve an additional piece of heat shrink over the whole finished job, but again, I don't actually have any of that here, unfortunately, so this will have to do for now. So as you can see there now, those have all shrunk up, sealed that in nicely. That is now a watertight repair. We'll get some insulation tape around that and call that bit done. Right guys, I think we'll call that bit done. I'm just going to wrap some cable ties on these now. Just pin these to the frame and we can move on and hopefully get the fuel tank back on. Right, so she's looking like a bike again. Not a bad bit of progress that for a few hours, couple of hours maybe. I've just popped the seat back on. I've not bolted this in yet because I need to put my new air filter in, so I've just popped that on there for now, stop the seat getting damaged, stop any junk making its way down into the carb, because we are in a quite a large workshop, so just to keep any debris from going in there. But it's pretty much back together, and that is one cool looking bike if you ask me. Still need to put my guards on for the radiators as well and fasten these plastics to them once them are in, and we've still got to do the front brake pads. I don't think I'm going to have time to get this rear wheel bearing done before the weekend, because I'm hoping to get out on this bike at the weekend. It's only a little bit of play, it does need doing, but I'll get a ride out of it, so we'll leave that as it is for now. Once my stator plate comes back, I'll be popping that on there. Hopefully this will then fire up, so I will be doing another video on this just to finish this off, those final little bits, and getting the bike running. We'll give it a little blast up and down the yard. But for now guys, I'm going to leave this one here. It's getting on a little bit now. I'm going to go and get some tea. I hope you enjoyed this. It's something a little bit different for the channel. Again, not full restoration or not sort of the stuff we usually do, but I'm doing it, so I thought why not film it, give you guys something to watch. Hope you've enjoyed it. Drop us some comments, let us know what you think, give us a like. We'll see you all in the next video guys.